On the Basis of Sex is a true-life story starring Felicity Jones, ARMIE HAMMER, Sam Waterston, Stephen Root and Kathy Bates. The movie was written by Daniel Stiepleman. Cinematography is by GRADY and music is by DANNA. On the Basis of Sex is directed by Mimi Leder, the woman who directed Deep Impact, Pay It Forward and various TV shows including The West Wing, LA Law and ER. What's the story? Ruth Ginsburg, played by Felicity Jones, stands out like a beacon amongst all the other men starting at Harvard Law School in the 1950s. As she looks around her during the welcome meeting, Ruth can spot a few other women there, so at least she's not totally alone. Later we learn that women have been coming to Harvard for 6 years, and there are 9 women attending this year. Back home, Ruth's husband, Martin, played by ARMIE HAMMER, looks after their baby daughter Jane. Martin is a second-year student at Harvard, a perfect husband and an all-round nice human being. The dean of the school is Erwin Griswold, played by Sam Waterston. He invites all the ladies over for dinner. After some preliminaries, he asks each woman to explain why they have taken a place that could have gone to a man. This statement expresses the default sexist point of view of the era. A further example of this attitude is shown during a lecture given by Professor Brown, played by Stephen Root. When Brown asks questions, Ruth is always the first to raise her hand. However, Brown ignores Ruth and chooses men to answer the questions. Ultimately, Ruth stands up and corrects an incomplete answer given by another student. Clearly, Ruth is an exceptional student. Ruth and Martin have drinks with their friends. During the game of charades, Martin is struck down with a mystery illness. Later in hospital, it is confirmed by doctors that Martin has some kind of cancer and there is only a 5% survival rate. This is obviously a huge shock, especially so early on in a movie. Ruth takes it upon herself to attend her husband's lectures as well as her own. Despite this extra work, Ruth still manages to be top of the class. The movie skips forward a few years. Martin has miraculously recovered from his illness and he has been offered a tax law job in New York. Ruth goes to Dean Griswold to ask if she can complete her Harvard degree at Columbia. Despite Ruth citing examples of when this has happened before, Dean Griswold is uncompromising. He tells Ruth that she must stay at Harvard to finish her degree. This comes across as unfair treatment, which is probably due to her gender. Ruth decides to leave Harvard and finishes her degree at Columbia. After skipping forward some more years, Ruth tries to get a job at a legal firm, but she finds it difficult. At this time there is little aptitude for hiring a woman for more than anything than a secretarial role. In the intervening years, Ruth becomes a professor. Martin suggests that Ruth uses her knowledge to train the next generation of women lawyers, and so this is exactly what she does. Ruth lectures on how the law treats men differently from women, and various example precedents are discussed. It seems that all the previous cases that had attempted to treat men and women equally have been shot down by the courts. Ruth takes her teenage daughter Jane, now played by Kaylee Spolney, to meet with the lawyer that argued one of these famous equality cases. Dorothy Kenyon, played by Kathy Bates, tells Jane that life is not fair and if she wants to cause a change in society, she should protest in the street. Back home, Martin tells Ruth about a tax law case. Normally Ruth is not interested in tax law cases, but this is an example of where the law ruled unfairly against a man because he could not be recognised as a caregiver. In other words, the law assumes that a caregiver would always be a woman. Ruth meets with the applicant, Charles Moritz, played by Chris Mulkey. Moritz agrees that Ruth can represent him. To him it's not about the money, it's about the fact that the government was calling him a tax cheat. Ruth calls on support from her old friend from the American Civil Liberties Union, Mel Wolfe, played by Justin Theroux. Together they prepare Moritz's case. Working on the side of the government, somewhat conveniently because we met them before, is Professor Brown and Erwin Griswold. They know that Moritz's case will open the floodgates for equality cases and this will cost the government a lot of time and money. They call upon Jim Bozarth, played by Jack Raynor, and he sets to work to pull out every law that discriminates on the basis of sex. The government's tactics are to prove that because there are so many laws that treat men and women differently, this is the way it should be. After Moritz refuses an offer from the government to settle the case out of court, the trial begins. Bozarth pleads the case for the government. He uses examples to argue that the law is actually aimed to protect women rather than discriminate against them. Martin is called upon to give the opening address because he is a skilled litigator. He opens strongly but then stumbles a little when subjected to some tough questions from the 3 Supreme Court judges. Ruth then takes her turn. She repeats an earlier mantra that while the law should not be swayed by the fashion of the day, it should be influenced by the mood of the era. Ruth points out that society has changed since all these laws were written, and the law now needs to be changed to reflect the new roles of men and women. Ultimately, the court agrees, and Moritz wins his case. Just before the titles run, we get to see the real Ruth Ginsburg. We are also informed that she helped to change many of the laws that discriminated on the basis of sex. Ruth eventually became a Supreme Court judge herself. Issues. Martin's diagnosis of cancer is clearly devastating, especially given the 5% recovery rate. I felt that this movie skipped over the obvious struggle that both Martin and Ruth must have gone through to beat the odds. How is it possible for Ruth to look after her daughter, a sick husband, and go to both sets of lectures? Nobody could be in two places at once, and so she must have had some help. I felt that we needed to know where this extra help came from, or we could have been shown scenes where Ruth struggles to do everything on her own, if indeed that is what she did. Ruth is sold to the audience as a pioneer for women in the legal field, but when we are introduced to Dorothy Kenyon, we get a little confused because here is another woman that has already done it all. It would have been a good idea to throw into the dialogue how long women have been practising law so that we could understand Ruth and Kenyon's place in the chronology of women practising law. Review. On the Basis of Sex is an important movie that provides an interesting retrospective on American culture. Felicity Jones and ARMIE HAMMER play likeable characters who take on the system and win. I especially like the fact that the movie was balanced. It didn't portray the lawyers for the government as evil men, they were just regular men with outdated attitudes. Mima Leder does a great job of maintaining the audience's interest despite the fact that many scenes are people in rooms talking about tax law. My rating, 85%. Hi, this is Mike Kendall and thanks for watching my video. I'd like to know what you thought of this movie. Was it a hit? Was it a flop? Let me know your thoughts and rating in the comments section. You can also tell me what other movies you'd like to see reviews for. Please like and subscribe and remember to hit that notification bell for all my new videos. Sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter would help me out a lot. I'd sure appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel. We're adding more all the time. I'm off to see a movie. You have a great day and I'll see you in the next video.